Have you ever noticed that sometimes waiting hurts more than the answer itself? You send an important text, the message is delivered, then nothing. 5 minutes pass, you check your phone. 10 minutes, still nothing. Your mind starts asking questions. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Did something happen? An hour later, you've imagined an entire story, and almost all of it is happening only inside your head. Or imagine sitting in a doctor's office. The appointment is over. The doctor smiles politely and says, "We'll have the results in about a week." Nothing bad has happened, at least not yet. But somehow, that week feels endless. You search the internet. You replay every symptom. Every tiny sensation suddenly feels important. Not because you know something is wrong, but because you don't know. Or picture a job interview. You thought it went well. The hiring manager shakes your hand and says, "We'll be in touch." Tomorrow comes, then the next day. Every email notification makes your heart race. Every unknown phone number suddenly matters. You begin analyzing every answer you gave, every expression on the interviewer's face, looking for clues that probably aren't there. Now imagine you're sitting on an airplane. The flight has been smooth for hours. Then, without warning, the aircraft drops. The cabin shakes violently. People grip their armrests. The turbulence lasts only a few seconds. Then it stops. No announcement, no explanation. And for many passengers, those next few minutes are far more frightening than the turbulence itself. Not because the plane is falling, but because they have no idea what will happen next. These situations seem completely different. A text message, a medical test, a job interview, a turbulent flight. But deep inside your brain, they trigger something remarkably similar. In every case, the real source of your discomfort isn't the event itself. It's the uncertainty surrounding it. Here's something even stranger. Many people report feeling relief after receiving bad news. Not because the news is good, it isn't, but because the waiting is finally over. How can that be? Why would certainty, even painful certainty, sometimes feel easier to bear than not knowing at all? At first, it doesn't make sense. After all, shouldn't your brain fear danger more than uncertainty? Modern neuroscience suggests the answer is far more surprising. Because your brain isn't simply trying to keep you safe. Every second of your life, it is trying to answer one question: what happens next? And when it can't, everything begins to change. We usually think anxiety begins when something bad happens: a diagnosis, a rejection, a sudden loss, a dangerous situation. But often, the anxiety begins much earlier, before the diagnosis, before the decision, before the phone call, before anything has actually gone wrong. Imagine receiving a message from your boss. "Can we talk tomorrow morning?" That's all. No explanation, no warning, just 7 words. Maybe you're getting promoted. Maybe they need help with a project. Maybe the conversation has nothing to do with you. But within seconds, your mind begins moving toward the worst possibilities. Am I being fired? Did I make a mistake? Does someone have a problem with me? Nothing has happened. The meeting hasn't begun. You have no evidence that you're in danger. And yet, your heart beats faster, your muscles tighten, your attention narrows. Your brain is already preparing for something it cannot see. Now imagine the message had been different. "We need to talk tomorrow about next month's schedule." The future is still unknown. You still don't know exactly what your boss will say, but the anxiety may suddenly become much weaker. Why? Because one small piece of information has given your brain a direction. The situation may still be unpleasant, but it is no longer completely open. And that difference matters, more than most people realize. Anxiety is not simply a reaction to bad events. It is often a reaction to possible events, events that have not happened, events that may never happen. The brain begins responding not to reality itself, but to the range of futures that reality might become. This is why uncertainty can be so exhausting. A known problem has boundaries. It has a shape, a beginning, a set of possible actions. But an unknown problem can become almost anything. And when almost anything is possible, the brain cannot easily decide what to prepare for. Should you fight? Should you escape? Should you wait? Should you act immediately? Should you relax? Every strategy may be correct, and every strategy may be wrong. So the brain remains alert, scanning, recalculating, searching for clues. It listens more carefully. It watches faces. It replays conversations. It checks the phone again, not because it enjoys worrying, but because it is trying to solve an unfinished future. This helps explain a strange distinction between fear and anxiety. Fear usually has an object. A car is moving toward you. A dog is charging. Someone is standing behind you in a dark parking lot. The threat is here. Your brain can organize a response. Move, freeze, run, call for help. Anxiety is different. The threat may be distant, vague, possible. You know something could happen, but you do not know what or when. Fear says, there is the danger. Anxiety says, something may be coming. That uncertainty keeps the system active. There is no clear moment when the threat begins, and no clear moment when it is safe to stop preparing. This does not mean uncertainty is always harmful. In many situations, it is useful. If you hear an unfamiliar sound downstairs at night, it makes sense to become alert. If dark clouds gather while you're hiking, it makes sense to reconsider your route. If someone you trust suddenly changes their behavior, it makes sense to pay attention. Uncertainty tells the brain that its current understanding may be incomplete, and sometimes that warning can keep you alive. But there is a hidden cost. The brain does not respond only to what is likely. It also has to consider what is possible, and the number of possible futures can grow almost without limit. A delayed text becomes rejection. A headache becomes a serious illness. A small mistake becomes the end of a career. A moment of turbulence becomes a crashing plane. Your brain is not predicting one future. It is generating many, then comparing them, updating them, trying to decide which one deserves attention. And when no answer arrives, the process continues. That is why waiting can feel like work. Even while you're sitting still, your brain is doing something. It is attempting to reduce uncertainty, to narrow the possibilities, to turn an invisible threat into something it can understand. Researchers studying anxiety have repeatedly found that uncertainty about a possible future threat can intensify anticipation and make it harder to choose an effective response. But this does not mean there is one simple uncertainty center in the brain. Anxiety emerges from interactions among multiple systems involved in attention, learning, bodily arousal, threat evaluation, and decision-making. The important idea is simpler. The less predictable a situation becomes, the harder it is for the brain to prepare. And preparation is one of the things the brain does best. It constantly estimates. What will happen if I take this step? What will this person say next? Is that sound getting closer? Is this face friendly? Is this road safe? Most of the time, you never notice these calculations. They happen quietly, automatically, below conscious awareness. The world feels stable because your brain is usually very good at anticipating what comes next. The floor remains beneath your feet. The door opens where you expect it to. A familiar voice sounds familiar. The car ahead continues along a predictable path. Life feels ordinary when the future behaves approximately as expected. But when prediction becomes difficult, the ordinary world changes. Silence feels meaningful. Delay feels threatening. Ambiguity feels personal. A neutral expression begins to look hostile. The brain starts treating missing information as information. And that may be the first major clue. Perhaps the brain does not fear the future itself. After all, every moment of your life arrives from the future. Most of it causes no alarm. What the brain struggles with is a future it cannot organize. A future with no reliable pattern. No clear probability. No obvious response. Because without prediction, the brain loses one of its greatest advantages, the ability to prepare before reality arrives. And this leads to the deeper question. Why is prediction so important that your brain is willing to create anxiety simply because it does not know what comes next? You rarely notice it, but your brain is almost never living entirely in the present. It is constantly reaching forward. A fraction of a second, a few seconds, sometimes years, trying to predict what comes next. Imagine you're talking to someone you know well. They begin a familiar sentence. I was just about to, and before they finish, you already know what they are going to say. Sometimes you even say it with them. You are not reading their mind. Your brain is using their tone, the context, their facial expression, and everything it already knows about them to predict the next words. Most of the time, the prediction is close enough. So close that you never realize a prediction happened at all. Now imagine your phone slips from your hand. You do not wait until it hits the floor. Your arm moves almost immediately. Your fingers reach toward the place where the phone is going to be, not where it was. If your brain could only react to the phone's current position, you would always be too late. Catching it requires a rapid estimate. Its speed, its direction, gravity, the position of your hand, the distance to the floor. You do not calculate any of this consciously. There is no equation in your mind, no deliberate plan. Your brain predicts the phone's future and moves your body toward it. The same thing happens every time you climb a staircase. You place one foot on a step. Before your weight shifts forward, your brain is already estimating the height of the next one. Your muscles prepare. Your balance changes. Your foot rises by approximately the right amount. You can climb familiar stairs while thinking about something completely different. But if one step is slightly higher than expected, your foot strikes it. Your body jerks. Suddenly, the staircase demands your full attention. Why? Because the future your brain prepared for did not arrive. Or think about driving. A car ahead of you begins drifting slightly toward the edge of its lane. The driver has not turned yet. No signal is flashing. Nothing dangerous has happened. But your foot may already move away from the gas. Your hands tighten around the wheel. Your brain has detected a pattern and begun preparing for what might happen next. The car may turn. The driver may be distracted. The vehicle may suddenly cross into your lane. You are not responding only to movement. You are responding to the future that movement suggests. Every driver does this constantly. They predict when a traffic light will change, whether a pedestrian will step into the street, whether the car ahead will brake, whether there is enough space to merge. Driving would be impossible if the brain waited for every event to happen before beginning a response. By the time danger became certain, it would often be too late. Even standing still depends on prediction. It feels passive. Your body seems motionless. But balance is not the absence of movement. It is a continuous process of correction. Your body sways slightly, even when you believe you are standing perfectly still. Signals arrive from your inner ear, your eyes, your muscles, your joints, and the pressure beneath your feet. Your brain combines them to estimate where your body is and where it is about to move. Then it adjusts your muscles before the movement becomes a fall. Every second, your nervous system predicts the consequences of gravity. Without that constant forecasting, you would lose balance. Walking works the same way. Each step is a controlled fall. Your body leans forward. One foot leaves the ground. For a brief moment, you are unstable. Your brain predicts where the next foot must land and prepares your muscles to place it there. You do this thousands of times a day, usually without thinking about a single step. Prediction is hidden inside nearly every ordinary action: reaching for a cup, opening a door, crossing a street, throwing a ball, listening to music, speaking, reading, even looking around a room. Your brain is constantly estimating what will happen next and preparing a response before complete information arrives. This is necessary because the nervous system is not instantaneous. Light takes time to be converted into neural signals. Those signals take time to travel. The brain takes time to interpret them. Commands take time to reach the muscles. By the time you consciously experience an event, the outside world has already moved on. A purely reactive brain would always be slightly behind reality. So instead, your brain tries to stay ahead. It uses the past to prepare for the next moment. This is why familiar actions feel effortless. When you reach for the light switch in your own home, you do not carefully search for it. Your hand moves toward the place where experience has taught your brain it should be. When someone throws you a ball, you do not run toward the ball's current location. You move toward where it will land. When you listen to a familiar song, your brain anticipates the rhythm. A delayed beat feels uncomfortable. A wrong note feels instantly wrong. Not because the sound is dangerous, but because it violates the pattern your brain had already prepared. Prediction shapes attention too. Imagine walking through a crowded airport. Hundreds of people move around you. Suitcases roll across the floor. Children change direction. Travelers stop without warning. Yet somehow, you move through the crowd. You do not consciously calculate every trajectory. Your brain quickly estimates where people are likely to be a moment from now. Most of these predictions succeed. You pass without colliding. Nothing unusual happens. And because nothing unusual happens, you never notice the enormous amount of forecasting involved. Successful predictions are almost invisible. Failed predictions are impossible to ignore. Someone suddenly stops in front of you. A stair is missing. A cup is lighter than expected. A door you thought was unlocked does not open. For a fraction of a second, reality feels wrong. That feeling is not caused only by the event. It is caused by the collision between the event and the future your brain had already prepared. This reveals something fundamental. Your brain is not simply receiving the world and responding afterward. It is constantly using incomplete information to guess what is about to happen. Then, it compares that guess with what actually occurs. If the prediction is accurate, the brain continues quietly. If it is wrong, attention increases. The model must be corrected. A new response must be prepared. In this sense, your experience of the present is deeply shaped by your expectations about the future. You hear the next word, partly because your brain predicted it. You catch the phone because your brain estimated where it would fall. You remain upright because your brain anticipated the movement of your body. You drive safely because your brain prepares for events that have not happened yet. Prediction is not an extra feature. It is not something the brain does only when planning a vacation or worrying about tomorrow. It is built into perception, movement, language, attention, learning, survival. The brain is not merely a reaction machine. It is a prediction machine. And most of the time, that machine works so well that the future arrives almost exactly where your brain expected it to be. But that creates a much deeper problem. What happens when there is no familiar pattern, no reliable clue, no stable probability? What happens when every possible future remains open and your brain cannot decide which one to prepare for? By now, one thing has become clear. Your brain is constantly trying to predict the future. Not next year, not next week, the next second, the next word, the next movement, the next sound. Most of the time, those predictions are surprisingly accurate, which is exactly why you never notice them. But what happens when your brain is wrong? To answer that question, we need to introduce one of the most influential ideas in modern neuroscience. It's called predictive processing. The name may sound complicated. The idea is surprisingly simple. Imagine your brain not as a camera, but as a scientist. Every moment, it forms a hypothesis about the world. Then it compares that hypothesis with incoming information from your senses. If the two match, very little needs to change. Your brain quietly says, everything is exactly as expected, and life continues. But when reality doesn't match the prediction, something very different happens. The brain immediately detects a mismatch. Neuroscientists call it a prediction error. That phrase may sound technical, but you've experienced it countless times. Imagine walking into your kitchen. Every morning, your coffee mug sits on the counter. Without thinking, your brain already expects to see it there. One morning, it's gone. For just a fraction of a second, something feels strange. You stop. You look again. Your attention immediately shifts. Why? Because reality didn't match your prediction. Or imagine listening to your favorite song. You've heard it hundreds of times. Your brain knows exactly which note comes next. Then someone intentionally changes one note. You notice it instantly. Not because your hearing suddenly became sharper, but because your prediction failed. Now imagine reaching into your pocket for your car keys. You expect to feel cold metal. Instead, your pocket is empty. Your body freezes. You check the other pocket, then your jacket, then your bag. Nothing. Within seconds, your heart begins to race. The keys didn't become dangerous. What changed was the prediction. Reality suddenly refused to follow the script your brain had prepared. Prediction errors happen constantly. Most are tiny. Someone pronounces your name differently. A traffic light changes sooner than expected. A friend arrives 5 minutes early. A restaurant changes its menu. Your brain notices, updates its internal model, and moves on. Usually, the process is so fast you never become aware of it. But sometimes, the prediction error is too large to ignore. Imagine walking downstairs in the dark. You believe there is one more step. Your foot moves downward, expecting solid ground. But the staircase has already ended. For a brief instant, your entire body lurches. Your stomach drops. It feels almost as if gravity itself has changed. What you experienced wasn't simply a missed step. It was a massive prediction error. Your brain confidently prepared your body for a future that never arrived. And here's something fascinating. Your brain doesn't dislike prediction errors. In fact, it depends on them. Without them, you could never learn. Think about a child learning to catch a ball. At first, they miss. Again and again. Each mistake teaches the brain something new. Throw the hands a little earlier. Move slightly to the left. Watch the ball more carefully. Every failed prediction helps build a better one. The same thing happens when you learn to ride a bicycle, drive a car, play the piano, speak a new language. Progress comes from prediction errors being corrected. So if prediction errors help us learn, why do some of them feel so uncomfortable? Why does your brain calmly accept that you grabbed the wrong coffee mug, but become deeply unsettled when it cannot predict what tomorrow will bring? That difference turns out to be crucial. A single prediction error is easy to fix. Your brain updates its model. The surprise is over. But uncertainty is different. With uncertainty, there is no single mistake to correct. There are dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of possible futures. The brain doesn't know which prediction is wrong because it doesn't know which prediction to make. Imagine trying to solve a puzzle without knowing what the final picture looks like. Every piece could fit, or none of them could. You keep turning them, testing them, trying another possibility. Your brain does something remarkably similar. It builds one future, then another, searching for the model that best explains what might happen next. And until it finds one, the prediction error never fully disappears. The brain remains active, watching, comparing, updating, waiting. This may explain something you've probably experienced. Sometimes, the moment you finally receive an answer, even if it's disappointing, your mind suddenly becomes quieter. Not because the outcome is good, but because the uncertainty has ended. The brain finally knows which model of reality is correct. The puzzle is complete. The prediction error can finally be resolved. And this leads us to an even deeper question. If uncertainty keeps the brain trapped in a state of unresolved prediction, why does the brain react to that state, almost as if it were facing real danger? At this point, a new question appears. If uncertainty is simply missing information, why does it feel so threatening? Why doesn't the brain simply say, "I don't know yet"? Why does it react as though something dangerous might be happening? The answer begins millions of years ago. Long before cities, long before medicine, long before smartphones, emails, or job interviews. Imagine standing alone on an open grassland. The wind suddenly changes. The birds stop singing. Something moves behind the tall grass. You don't know what it is. It could be nothing, or it could be a predator. Now imagine finding unfamiliar berries. They look edible, they smell fine, but you've never seen them before. Are they safe or poisonous? Or imagine returning to your shelter only to discover fresh footprints nearby. You don't know who left them. A friend? A stranger? An enemy? Every one of these situations has something in common. The danger is not visible. The outcome is uncertain. For our ancestors, uncertainty wasn't an abstract idea. It was often a matter of survival. The individuals who ignored uncertainty were less likely to survive long enough to pass on their genes. Those who became cautious, paid attention, and prepared for the worst had a better chance. Over thousands of generations, natural selection shaped a brain that treated uncertainty as something important. Not necessarily dangerous, but important enough to deserve immediate attention. Think of uncertainty as an alarm. Not an alarm that says you're in danger, but an alarm that says something could be wrong. Pay attention. Gather more information. Be ready. That simple strategy worked remarkably well. If the rustling in the bushes turned out to be the wind, being cautious cost very little. But if it turned out to be a hungry predator, that extra caution could save your life. From an evolutionary perspective, it was often safer to overestimate danger than underestimate it. A false alarm might waste a little energy. Missing a real threat could cost everything. This idea is sometimes described by evolutionary psychologists as an asymmetry in the cost of mistakes. Imagine hearing a sudden noise in the forest. You assume it's a predator. You run. It was only the wind. You lose a few minutes. Now imagine making the opposite mistake. You assume it's only the wind. This time, it isn't. Evolution strongly favored brains that were willing to investigate uncertainty rather than ignore it. That ancient strategy still lives inside us. Only now, the world has changed. The rustling bushes have become unread messages. The unknown footprints have become medical test results. The hidden predator has become an unanswered email from your manager. Your brain often reacts using ancient survival machinery to problems that no longer threaten your life. Imagine receiving a notification from your bank. Please contact customer support. You don't know why. Within seconds, your imagination begins working. Was my account hacked? Did someone steal my identity? Did a payment fail? The message contains almost no information. But your brain doesn't stay neutral. It immediately starts searching for possible threats. Or imagine someone you've known for years walking past you without saying hello. Perhaps they didn't see you. Perhaps they were distracted. Perhaps they were thinking about something else entirely. But your brain may instantly ask, are they angry? Did I do something? Is something wrong? Again, uncertainty becomes a signal that demands explanation. Notice something interesting. Your brain rarely chooses the most pleasant explanation first. It often begins with the most protective one, not because it wants you to suffer, but because evolution shaped it to prepare for problems before celebrating safety. A missed threat was historically much more expensive than unnecessary caution. In the modern world, this ancient strategy can become exhausting. Most of the uncertainty we experience today doesn't involve predators or poisonous food. It involves emails, relationships, finances, medical appointments, social media, career decisions, things that rarely have immediate life or death consequences. Yet your brain doesn't always distinguish between physical uncertainty and psychological uncertainty. Both activate the same basic question: should I be preparing for something? And if the answer remains unclear, the preparation continues. You think about the situation again. You check your phone again. You replay the conversation again. Not because your brain enjoys repetition, but because it keeps searching for enough information to finally turn uncertainty into certainty. This is why uncertainty feels so uncomfortable. It leaves an ancient survival system without an answer. It cannot tell whether to relax or remain alert, so it often chooses to stay alert, just in case. For most of human history, that strategy made perfect sense. Today, it can leave us worrying about conversations that never happen, problems that never appear, and futures that never arrive. Which leads to an even more fascinating question. If uncertainty activates such an ancient survival system, why do we often respond by checking our phones, refreshing our inboxes, or repeatedly asking for reassurance? What exactly is the brain trying to accomplish? If uncertainty feels like a problem, your brain immediately starts looking for a solution. Not a perfect solution, just enough information to reduce the uncertainty. This is why, when someone doesn't reply to your message, you don't check your phone just once. You check it again, then again. 5 minutes later, you tell yourself, "I'm done checking." 10 minutes later, you're looking again. Nothing has changed. You already know there isn't a new message. Yet somehow, your thumb opens the app almost automatically. Why? Because your brain is asking the same question over and over. Has the future become more predictable yet? Every refresh is a search for certainty. The same thing happens when you're waiting for medical test results. You tell yourself there is nothing you can do until the doctor calls. Logically, that's true. Emotionally, your brain refuses to accept it. You search the internet. You compare symptoms. You read stories from strangers. You convince yourself you're gathering information. Sometimes you are, but often your brain is doing something else. It is trying to shrink the enormous space of unknown possibilities. Now think back to the job interview. The interview ended 3 days ago. No one has called. You replay every answer. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I should have answered differently. Maybe they smiled because they liked me. Or maybe they were just being polite. The conversation is over. Nothing can be changed, yet your mind keeps replaying it. Why? Because every replay is another attempt to predict the outcome. The brain keeps searching for a pattern it may have missed. Relationships work the same way. Imagine someone you love suddenly becomes distant. They answer with shorter messages. They seem distracted. Nothing dramatic has happened, at least not that you know of. But uncertainty immediately fills the empty space. Are they losing interest? Did I do something wrong? Are they hiding something? One unanswered question quickly becomes 20, then 50, then 100. Notice something important. The brain doesn't enjoy these thoughts. It isn't entertaining itself. It is trying to solve a puzzle. Now imagine checking your investment account. The market drops sharply, 5%, then 7, then 10. You refresh the chart. Again, again, again. You already know the price cannot recover between 2 refreshes. Yet you keep looking, because every update feels like new information. Every number offers the possibility that uncertainty might finally decrease. Sometimes it does. Often, it doesn't. This pattern appears everywhere. Parents repeatedly check whether their child arrived home safely. Someone refreshes the package tracking page 10 times in one afternoon. A student checks the university admissions portal every few minutes. An entrepreneur opens analytics before getting out of bed. A person waiting for an important phone call turns the volume up, checks the signal, and looks at the screen even though it hasn't rung. Different situations, the same brain, the same goal. Reduce uncertainty as quickly as possible. What's fascinating is that getting a tiny piece of information can briefly reduce anxiety, even when that information changes nothing. Think about tracking a delayed flight. The app says, delayed by 20 more minutes. Is that good news? Not really. The delay is even longer. Yet many people feel slightly calmer. Why? Because uncertainty has become a little smaller. The brain prefers an imperfect map to no map at all. But there's a hidden trap. Sometimes the search for certainty creates even more uncertainty. You search one medical symptom and discover 10 possible diseases. You read one comment and begin questioning an entire relationship. You watch one market update, then another, then another, until every tiny fluctuation feels meaningful. The more information you consume, the more possible futures your brain begins constructing. Instead of calming down, it starts working even harder. This is one reason excessive reassurance often doesn't last. Someone tells you everything is going to be okay. You feel better for a few minutes. Then another question appears. But what if they're wrong? So you ask someone else, then another person, then you search online, then you ask again tomorrow. The relief fades quickly because the brain isn't only looking for comfort, it is looking for certainty. And certainty is something life rarely provides. This creates a paradox. The more urgently your brain demands certainty, the more behaviors it invents to chase it. Checking, refreshing, researching, replaying conversations, imagining outcomes, seeking reassurance. Most of these behaviors are completely understandable. In moderation, they can even be useful. The problem begins when they stop reducing uncertainty and start feeding it instead. Because every new possibility creates another question. Every unanswered question creates another prediction. And every prediction can become another source of anxiety. Which raises an even deeper mystery. If the brain is trying so hard to fill the gaps, why does it so often fill them with the worst possible scenario? Imagine someone sends you a message. Can we talk later? Nothing else. No explanation, no context, no emoji, just 5 words. Now ask yourself, what happens next? For a brief moment, nothing. Then your brain gets to work. Maybe they're upset. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe something bad happened. Maybe this is about me. Notice what your brain almost never says. I don't have enough information yet. Instead, it starts telling a story. Not because it knows the truth, but because it hates an unfinished future. This may be one of the strangest things about the human mind. When information is missing, the brain rarely leaves the empty space alone. It fills it. Sometimes correctly, often incorrectly. Imagine reading a message that simply says, "We need to talk." Those 4 words have no emotional meaning by themselves. They could lead to wonderful news, a surprise, a proposal, an opportunity, or something unpleasant. The sentence itself contains almost no information. Yet 2 people can read exactly the same message and experience completely different emotions. Why? Because the message isn't creating the emotion. The story is. Your brain immediately begins building a future to explain the missing pieces. And here's the fascinating part. When people are already anxious, those stories often become increasingly negative. Not because the brain enjoys suffering, but because it is trying to prepare. Think back to our ancestors. Imagine hearing movement outside your shelter at night. You have 2 possible explanations. It's probably the wind, or it could be a predator. If you assume the wind, and you're wrong, the consequences could be fatal. If you assume danger, and you're wrong, you simply lose some sleep. From an evolutionary perspective, expecting the worst possibility was often the safer strategy. Modern neuroscience and psychology suggest that anxious states can bias attention and interpretation toward potential threats. This doesn't mean everyone always imagines the worst outcome, but under uncertainty, the brain often gives greater weight to information that could signal danger. This doesn't mean your brain always predicts disaster. It doesn't. But when uncertainty remains unresolved, the balance begins to shift. Possible threats receive more attention. Imagine your partner says, "I'm tired tonight." That sentence has dozens of possible explanations. Maybe they had a difficult day. Maybe they slept badly. Maybe they're getting sick. Maybe they simply need rest. But if your brain is already searching for danger, Another explanation quickly appears. They're pulling away from me. Nothing in reality has confirmed that story, yet once the story exists, everything begins to support it. A shorter message, a delayed reply, less eye contact, a quieter voice. Suddenly, ordinary events become evidence, not because reality changed, but because your brain changed its model of reality. This reveals another remarkable feature of prediction. The brain doesn't simply predict events, it predicts meaning. Imagine your manager walks past you without smiling. Yesterday, you wouldn't have noticed. Today, after receiving that mysterious email, the same expression feels completely different. Your brain has already built a story. Now it begins searching for proof. Psychologists sometimes call this confirmation bias. Once we adopt an explanation, we naturally pay more attention to information that seems to support it. At the same time, we often overlook information that points in another direction. The prediction starts shaping perception itself. And because perception changes, the story becomes more convincing. This creates a powerful feedback loop. Uncertainty creates a story. The story changes attention. Attention finds evidence. The evidence strengthens the story, which creates even more certainty, even if the story is completely wrong. Think about lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. The room is quiet. Nothing new is happening, yet your mind refuses to stop. One possibility becomes another. What if I lose my job? If I lose my job, then I won't be able to pay the mortgage. Then everything falls apart. Within minutes, your brain has constructed an entire future. None of it has happened. Most of it probably never will. But your body begins responding as though the imagined future already exists. Your heart beats faster. Your breathing changes. Sleep disappears. The brain cannot always distinguish between preparing for a possible future and experiencing it. And here's the paradox. These stories often create the very certainty the brain was searching for. Not true certainty, narrative certainty. The unknown becomes known. Instead of saying, "I don't know what's happening," the brain now says, "I know exactly what's happening," even when it doesn't. Oddly enough, a frightening explanation can sometimes feel easier than no explanation at all, because uncertainty keeps prediction unfinished. A story, even a false one, allows the brain to stop searching, at least temporarily. This may explain why rumors spread so quickly, why conspiracy theories attract attention, why people sometimes jump to conclusions. An incomplete picture is uncomfortable. A complete picture, even an inaccurate one, can feel psychologically satisfying. The brain would often rather believe a coherent story than remain suspended between countless unknown possibilities. Of course, this strategy isn't always harmful. Our brains need stories. Stories help us understand people, plan our lives, learn from experience, imagine the future. Without them, decision-making would be nearly impossible. The problem begins when the story hardens, before enough evidence exists, when possibility becomes certainty, when imagination becomes perceived reality. At that point, the brain is no longer predicting the future. It is living inside a future it created itself. And that raises one final question. If uncertainty can trap the brain inside imagined futures, is there any way to break the cycle and teach the brain that not knowing is not always dangerous? Up to this point, everything we've discussed has made perfect sense. Prediction helps you walk, drive, learn, avoid danger. Uncertainty tells your brain to pay attention. There is nothing abnormal about any of this. In fact, without these mechanisms, human beings probably wouldn't have survived. So when does something useful become a problem? The answer is surprisingly simple. It happens when the brain begins treating almost every uncertainty as if it were an emergency. Psychologists use a term for this: intolerance of uncertainty. Despite how it sounds, this is not a mental disorder by itself. It is a psychological tendency. Some people tolerate uncertainty fairly easily. Others experience it as deeply uncomfortable. Research suggests that intolerance of uncertainty plays an important role in generalized anxiety disorder and is also involved in several other psychological conditions. It is considered one contributing process among many, not a single explanation for why these disorders develop. Think of it as a volume knob. Everyone experiences uncertainty. The difference is how loudly the brain reacts to it. For one person, an unanswered text message is mildly annoying. For another, it dominates the entire evening. The external situation may be identical. The internal experience is completely different. Imagine two people waiting for medical test results. Both receive exactly the same information. The results will be ready next week. One person thinks, "I'll know soon enough," then goes about their day. The other checks the patient portal 5 times before lunch, searches symptoms online, calls the clinic, replays every recent physical sensation. Neither person knows the result. The uncertainty is exactly the same. What differs is the brain's willingness to remain inside that uncertainty. Here's where the trap begins. When uncertainty feels unbearable, the brain starts searching for immediate relief. At first, that seems reasonable. You check your phone. You ask for reassurance. You avoid making the difficult decision. You postpone the conversation. You stay with what feels familiar. For a brief moment, the anxiety decreases, and your brain notices. That worked. Without realizing it, you've taught your brain an important lesson. Whenever uncertainty appears, escape it. The relief feels rewarding, but it comes at a hidden cost. Because every time you avoid uncertainty, your brain loses an opportunity to discover something important, that nothing terrible happened. Imagine someone who becomes anxious about public speaking. The easiest solution is to avoid speaking. The anxiety immediately drops. It feels like success. But what has the brain actually learned? Not that public speaking is safe. It learned, the only reason I survived was because I escaped. The next opportunity feels even more threatening. Now imagine someone who constantly asks others, "Are you sure everything is okay?" Each reassuring answer brings relief for a little while. Then the uncertainty returns, so they ask again and again. Not because they enjoy reassurance, but because their brain has become dependent on it. Every reassurance reduces anxiety today, but increases the need for reassurance tomorrow. Avoidance works the same way. The more uncertain situations you avoid, the fewer chances your brain has to update its predictions. Remember prediction errors? Earlier, we discovered that the brain learns when its predictions turn out to be wrong. Avoidance prevents those learning moments from happening. If you never enter the uncertain situation, your brain never discovers that its frightening prediction was inaccurate. The old prediction survives, untested, unchallenged. Sometimes it even grows stronger. Imagine never taking an elevator because you're afraid it might fail. Every day you choose the stairs. Nothing bad happens. That feels reassuring, but your brain never receives the one piece of evidence it actually needs: that the elevator would probably have been fine. The fear remains alive because reality never gets the chance to correct it. This creates a powerful cycle. Uncertainty creates anxiety. Anxiety leads to avoidance. Avoidance brings temporary relief. Temporary relief teaches the brain to avoid uncertainty again. The cycle repeats. Over time, life can begin shrinking. Not because the world became more dangerous, but because the brain became less willing to tolerate the unknown. And here's the irony. The more certainty you demand, the less capable you become of living in a world that can never offer complete certainty. Because such a world doesn't exist. No relationship comes with guarantees. No investment is risk-free. No medical test predicts everything. No career is completely secure. No parent knows exactly what will happen to their child. Uncertainty isn't a flaw in life. It is one of its permanent features. Trying to eliminate it completely is like trying to stop the weather from changing. The goal was never to remove uncertainty. The goal was always to navigate it. This changes the question entirely. Perhaps mental strength isn't measured by how much certainty you possess. Perhaps it's measured by how much uncertainty your brain can tolerate without inventing catastrophe or running away. Which leads us to the most hopeful question of this entire journey. Can the brain actually learn to become comfortable with not knowing? At this point, you might be wondering something important. If the brain naturally fears uncertainty, does that mean we're stuck with it? Is this simply how the mind works? The answer is more hopeful than you might expect, because the brain is constantly learning. Not only when you're in school, not only when you're reading a book, it learns from experience every single day. Think back to childhood. The first time you rode a bicycle, your brain predicted that balancing would be impossible. It was wrong. You fell again and again. But eventually, something changed. Not because someone explained balance better, because your brain experienced a different reality. Prediction by prediction, it rewrote its model. The same process never stopped. It still happens today. The brain is always asking, what happened? Was my prediction correct? Should I keep this model or build a better one? This is exactly why avoidance has such powerful effects. Imagine every time uncertainty appears, you immediately escape. You cancel the difficult conversation. You avoid making the decision. You ask someone else to decide for you. You check your phone every 30 seconds. Each time, your anxiety falls. Your brain notices the pattern, not consciously, automatically. It learns something. Uncertainty disappeared only after I escaped. After enough repetitions, that lesson becomes stronger. The next uncertain situation feels even more dangerous, not because it actually is, but because your brain has collected years of evidence that uncertainty must always be avoided. The brain isn't being irrational. It is learning from the experiences you repeatedly give it. Now imagine the opposite. Not a dramatic change, not forcing yourself into overwhelming situations, just something slightly different. You send an important message and decide not to check your phone for the next 30 minutes. The uncertainty is still there. Your brain protests. Check now. Something might have happened. You need to know. But nothing terrible happens. 30 minutes pass, then an hour. Eventually, the reply arrives. Or maybe it doesn't. Either way, you survived the uncertainty. That experience matters, far more than most people realize, because your brain has now collected new evidence. Not evidence that uncertainty feels pleasant, but evidence that uncertainty itself was not dangerous. One experience will not rewrite years of learning. Neither will 2 or 3. The brain changes through repetition, the same way it learned fear. It can also learn a different prediction. Modern psychotherapy makes use of this principle in several evidence-based approaches. While different therapies use different techniques, many help people gradually test fearful predictions instead of automatically avoiding uncertainty. The goal is not to eliminate uncertainty, but to change how the brain responds to it. Notice the difference. The objective isn't to convince yourself that nothing bad will ever happen. That would simply be another prediction, and no one can honestly make it. Instead, the brain learns something much more realistic. I don't know what will happen, and I can still handle it. That sentence may sound simple, but psychologically, it represents a profound shift. Instead of demanding certainty, the brain begins developing confidence in its own ability to cope with uncertainty. Those are not the same thing. One depends on controlling the future. The other depends on trusting yourself within an unpredictable future. Think about someone learning to swim. The goal isn't to remove all water from the pool. The goal is to become capable of moving through it. Life works the same way. No one can eliminate uncertainty. No technology, no amount of money, no relationship, no medical test, no career. There will always be another unknown. The remarkable thing is that the brain doesn't actually need perfect certainty to feel safe. It only needs enough experiences to discover that uncertainty doesn't automatically lead to catastrophe. Each time a feared prediction fails to come true, the brain has an opportunity to update its internal model. Sometimes that update is tiny, almost invisible, but tiny changes accumulate. One day, you notice something surprising. The situation that once consumed your entire evening now passes with only a brief moment of discomfort. Not because life became easier, because your brain began expecting a different future. And perhaps that is the most remarkable feature of the human mind. The same brain that learned to fear uncertainty also possesses the ability to learn that uncertainty is simply part of being alive. Which leaves us with one final question. If uncertainty can never disappear, what if the goal was never to eliminate it at all? What if uncertainty isn't the enemy, but one of the fundamental conditions that makes human consciousness possible? Let's return to where we began. A phone that never rings, a medical result that hasn't arrived, an email that remains unanswered, a conversation that still hasn't happened. At the beginning of this journey, those moments seemed like ordinary parts of everyday life. Now, they look very different. Because the discomfort was never really about the phone, or the email, or the test results. It came from something much deeper. A brain trying to see a future that hadn't been written yet. For millions of years, that ability helped our ancestors survive. The brain learned to imagine tomorrow before tomorrow arrived, to predict, to prepare, to notice danger before it appeared. That extraordinary ability became one of humanity's greatest strengths. But every gift has a price. The same mind that can imagine danger can also imagine possibility. The same brain that worries about tomorrow can also plan tomorrow. The same imagination that creates anxiety also creates art, science, music, architecture, stories, civilizations, hope. Think about it. A deer runs when it sees a predator. A human being can worry about a meeting next Thursday. We can mentally travel through time. We can replay yesterday, imagine next year, picture lives we have never lived, create inventions that have never existed, fall in love with someone we have only just met because we can imagine an entire future together. The ability to predict is inseparable from the ability to dream. Perhaps that is why consciousness is both magnificent and heavy. The future exists nowhere. It is not stored inside the universe. It exists inside the human mind. And every future we imagine is only a prediction. Some become reality, most never do. Yet our brains often react to imagined futures as though they were already unfolding. Throughout this film, we've discovered something remarkable. The brain is not broken because it seeks certainty. It is doing exactly what evolution shaped it to do. It predicts. It searches for patterns. It tries to reduce uncertainty, again and again and again. The problem isn't the brain. The problem is the expectation that complete certainty should be possible. But look closely at life itself. No one knows who they will meet next year. No one knows which conversation will quietly change everything. No one knows which opportunity will appear unexpectedly, or which disappointment will eventually become the beginning of something better. The future has never offered guarantees. Perhaps it never was supposed to. Maybe uncertainty isn't a flaw in reality. Maybe it's one of reality's defining features. And perhaps the real struggle isn't between certainty and uncertainty. It's between the world as it is and the world our brains keep wishing it would become. A world where every answer arrives on time. Every relationship is predictable. Every decision is obvious. Every outcome is guaranteed. Such a world has never existed, and it never will. Maybe the deepest form of confidence doesn't come from knowing what will happen next. Maybe it comes from knowing that whatever happens, you'll meet it when it arrives. Not today, not inside imagined futures, but in the only place life has ever actually happened, the present moment. Because the future will always remain partly unknown. And perhaps that isn't something to defeat. Perhaps it's something to make peace with. So the next time your mind races ahead, inventing stories, searching for certainty, trying desperately to solve a future that hasn't happened yet, pause for a moment and remember, your brain is only trying to protect you. It has been practicing that job for millions of years. But protection is not the same as prediction, and imagination is not the same as reality. Perhaps the real question was never, how can I eliminate uncertainty? Perhaps the better question is, can I live fully without demanding that the future reveal itself in advance? Because maybe inner peace doesn't begin when every question finally has an answer. Maybe it begins the moment we stop asking the future to promise us what it never could. And perhaps that is the quiet paradox of being human. The very mind that searches endlessly for certainty is the same mind capable of finding meaning in a world that has never promised it.